Welcome Bloodsworn and Battlegrim to Vigrio the Battle Plane for this review of John Gwyn's The Shadow of the Gods. I am Steven, your favorite quadriplegic booktuber, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Phantology. So The Shadow of the Gods comes out just a few days after the drop of this review. Thank you, John Gwyn and company, for this advanced review copy of the book in exchange for my honest review. Josh and I are going to be talking about this in a long-form podcast. You can find that on Phantology podcast channel. That'll cover your spoilers and plot points and everything, but I'll just kind of do general thoughts and review of why you should or shouldn't be excited about this book. So before we get too far, full disclosure, this is my first John Gwyn. I apologize to big fans because I know there's quite a community around some of his other books, and I will get to those eventually. But The Shadow of the Gods, the first of a new trilogy that he's writing, and I'm excited to read more. High level, this book is written from a very Norse mythology lens. I know some of his other series are more like Celtic and general medieval European, at least that's what I understand. This is very much Vikings and Norse and the Last Kingdom type of vibe. The gods were all killed about 300 years ago in a big cataclysmic event. And since then, we have these demons that are kind of roving the land. They've emerged from this big pit, and life is hard on the battle plane. People are not expected to live very long, and you usually die violent deaths. We have three main points of view. Orca, who is a mother and former warrior, and all around just force in every conceivable way. Elvar, who's a young shield maiden warrior of the Battlegrim, a mercenary type group, and Varg, a slave who is fleeing disaster with his eyes set on vengeance for his mysterious past. So before we get into my review and ratings for the book, I have seen other reviews coming in, haven't really looked into them in depth because I didn't want my opinion swayed, but overall I see right now it carries a 4.46 rating on Goodreads, and most reviews are very high praise. And I'm sorry to say it, but I think that's a little too high. I think this is a solid book. I don't think it's a great book. By the end of this review, I'll give you my final number out of 10, but I do think 4.46 a little high, and I think as more people read it, and it actually comes out, and there's not just advanced review copies out there, I think that'll come down. I think there's some genuine criticisms of the book, as well as plenty of good reasons why. Look, I'm not saying this is not a book you should read. I really did enjoy it, but I think it's a little too high right now. So pros for the book, let's start with the positive. John Gwyn obviously knows his stuff when it comes to action and weapons and fighting. I can tell that he is a student of this. I'm someone who knows nothing about this other than honestly what I've read in fantasy books, but I completely buy that he knows what he's talking about, down to the terminology of how to fight and strategy in throwing your axe and sword around. Like, look, I believe it. I totally bought in. And this was very enjoyable to read through. It's always nice to get someone's perspective when someone knows what they're talking about, hearing from an expert. Also, the setting was fantastic. Very strong pro for the book. It's this Viking-esque landscape with a familiar mythology, if you know Norse mythology at all. It's enough of the familiar with a new twist on it, with all of the new fantasy things that he throws in. There are lots of big sweeping landscapes, and you can visualize everything that's going on fairly well. I'm playing Breath of the Wild right now, and so that really helped me because at times in the book I felt like I was just kind of like running through the wooded glen and enjoying the outdoors, and there's a big element of that in Shadow of the Gods. So before I get into the cons, the meh parts, like the characters for me were just okay. There were some that were great, and I'll get into that a little bit later, no spoilers there, but I found that a lot of them were fairly interchangeable. These are mostly the secondary and tertiary characters. I'll be honest, I read the book, I tried my best to pay attention, right? This is not just me listening and missing things. This is me actively trying to understand what's going on because I enjoyed reading, but there were times where I would pick it back up again, it would switch to a different point of view, because the chapters are fairly short and we were switching pretty often, where I would be confused which guy this was referring to and if they were in this band or this band and what the distinctive thing was about them. There were just so many characters and the action moved so quickly that I struggled with this. I thought that this characterization could have been stronger. Were the main characters strong? Yes, for the most part. I think there could have been more depth there. I don't know if I was super attached to all of them, so overall characters are like fairly meh. Okay, cons. I think the main thing that I took issue with in the book was that throughout it was fairly surface level. And by that I mean, yes, there was a lot of action, and yes, it was exciting to read through. However, there were not very many moments of actual commentary on life or times to sit with the characters and get into their inner dialogue and musing and really grow attached to them. And I understand some readers are like, that stuff is boring. Like in Stormlight Archive, when I'm sitting with characters, or in Wheel of Time, just two examples off the top of my head, some people feel like that stuff is boring and they would like to be actively out and doing things. And that comes down to a preference thing. For me, I enjoy those moments for the most part. I like it when we can sit with the characters, get their internal dialogue, and really appreciate them and get another view on life. I think that's a real strong argument for reading in general, right? Like being able to experience so many different viewpoints and points of view. And I don't think you get that a ton here. The strongest theme here is the sense of family, whether it be by blood or if it's adopted from your shield brothers and sword sisters or what have you. It's in there every now and then, enough to at least mention that there is some thematic depth to it, but I don't think, I mean, like out of 450 pages, there could have been more, right? And as someone who really appreciates that, that was my major con for the book. I also found the chapters to be a little predictable. There was kind of a formula we would follow where it would intro and we would kind of be like picking up on where we left off last time. And then there would be some unexpected action or violence that happened. And then we would deal with that through the remainder of the chapter. Now, Gwyn does a fantastic job of bringing in so many unique ways to have violence and action here. Lots of really unique stuff. That was entertaining to read throughout. However, con, I guess just back to what I'm thinking before, like, does this need to be in every single chapter? Could we have had a book where there was still this action, the same entertaining plot, but there were stronger themes? I think we could have. That's what I would have preferred. So I would recommend this book to fans of series like Red Rising, Anthony Ryan's Valen Al-Sorna books, The Burning by Evan Winter. These are all really fast-paced, action-y books, and that should be no surprise based off my previous pros and cons of the book. I'd give it a pass if you are huge fans of epic things like Stormlight, Wheel of Time, Song of Ice and Fire, and you like them because of the ability to get some deeper meanings and sit with the characters. Now, I'm not trying to be gatekeeping here and saying that you can't like all of them. You certainly can. I'm just pointing out what the pros and cons of this book are and where you might find those in other series. Okay, final numbers here. Setting, 8.5 out of 10. Loved the familiar Viking and mythology nature of it. Loved how immersive it was, how I could easily visualize myself out there on the battle plane. Probably the best part of the book. Okay, characters, 6 out of 10. I'm sorry, there were a lot of interchangeable bits here. I did like some of the main ones. Orca I thought was especially very strong, my favorite character. There's not a lot of books where we have a mother who's the main character and have a mother who is so much on screen and so capable and does not need anyone else's help. And honestly, by the end, there is a nice bit with her that even made me appreciate this more. Next month, Fantology is rolling out our top 3 fantasy bracket, and this time it's going to be top 3 mothers in science fiction and fantasy. We were talking in our Discord and saying there are not very many mothers that are on screen a ton. So Orca was awesome. That said, overall, I'm sorry, the characters are still 6 out of 10. The plot, I'm going to go 7 out of 10. I liked the fast-paced nature of it. I thought it was strange that even for as fast-paced as it was, you didn't really get to the meat of what the actual plot was until like at least halfway into the book. Like there were certainly hints of what was going on previously, but there were all these like smaller episodes and then once we get like halfway through into it, we're like, okay, now this is the thing. This is the plot that we're really pursuing. So 7 out of 10 for that. There were some good moments, but also some kind of throwaway stuff that I thought wasn't quite as necessary. I will say the end was great. It really upped my review of the entire book, and I'm very interested in reading more after getting these last few chapters. Pacing, I'm not going to put a number here. You pick. If you like fast-paced, it's going to be 10 out of 10. If you'd like to sit with characters more, you're not going to like it as much. I'm somewhere in the middle, obviously more on the sit with the characters side of things. So you pick the rating on that. I can't assign it. It's too subjective. And then finally, prose, 7 out of 10. There's nothing fancy here. It makes for a very compelling, fast-paced read with a fairly accessible lexicon that Gwyn likes to use. There are some unique words that are unique to the culture, not too many. The names are not too hard, and they're fairly within world, so I didn't have any issues with it. I didn't think it necessarily stood out. So overall, yeah, good prose. And then final rating, Shadow of the Gods, 7.5 out of 10. This is lower than many of the other ARC reviews that I've seen out there. After recording this, I am now going to go look and see what exactly they said. See if I missed anything. Please let me know in the comments below. If I did, after you read the book, check out our longer formed review that will include spoilers. Thanks for watching. Sub and like, and check out phantologybooks.com for all of your other fantasy book related content that you need. And carry on, keep your axes sharp, and avoid the battle plane because you're not going to last long out there. See you later. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Phantology. If you'd like to let us know your opinions on all things sci-fi and fantasy, join our Discord. Invites are in the episode descriptions below. If you'd like to support the show, like these fine folks here, you can do that at patreon.com/phantology_books. Patrons get early access to new episodes, exclusive postings, and exclusive Discord benefits. But of course, just listening and watching and sharing with your friends and family is support enough. Journey before destination all.